Hey folks, Scott Nolan here to talk to you once again about the field sobriety tests and why you should never take them. I've talked to you in many of my videos about how these tests are not required. You do not have to blow in the breath test. You do not have to walk a straight line, and you do not have to stand on one leg. You don't have to follow a pen or a light with your eyes or touch your nose or say the alphabet or count backwards or any of that nonsense. I am not talking about the breath test back at the police station. I am telling you that before you're arrested, you don't have to do any of that nonsense. And you shouldn't. Here's one of many reasons why. Accuracy. Metal detectors are not gun detectors. They only know that metal has gone through. If I carry my keys through a metal detector, the alarm is going to sound the same as if I carry a firearm. I set off metal detectors every time I go into a courthouse with these suspenders. Doesn't mean I'm carrying a gun. And to arrest me for carrying a gun because that machine sounded is ridiculous. Well, field sobriety tests do not detect alcohol. They don't detect it on you, in you, or near you. They detect a lack of coordination. Now, it is absolutely true that most drunks don't have any coordination. But calling the field sobriety test a drunk detector is a lie. It is an uncoordination detector. Arresting someone for failing the field sobriety test is a lot like arresting somebody for making the metal detector sound. Now, here's what you need to know about these tests. They were created back in 1977 by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, or NHTSA. NHTSA hired some contractors and said, create us a series of tests that will test for alcohol. And that set of contractors went off and created these tests. And then NHTSA said, well, okay, now we need someone who will validate these tests, someone who will test them in a laboratory setting to make sure they do what we want them to do. So guess who they hired? They hired the very same people that created the tests and said, hey, look, we want to make sure these tests work. Will you tell us if these tests work? And those people did some tests of the tests. They did some experiments. And lo and behold, back then the BAC, the legal BAC was 0.1. Lo and behold, if you do these tests, it will detect a 0.1 BAC with a 76% accuracy. A couple of years later, the laws dropped. And the BAC was now 0.08. And they went to the same set of contractors and said, will you test this? And they said, yup. And they did a test. Guess what? Detects 0.8% alcohol with 76% accuracy. Now, they did this 5 times. There were a total of 5 different tests of the field sobriety tests. And they uniformly returned a 76% accuracy rate. Now, since your tax dollars paid for this, you are allowed under the Freedom of Information Act to go take a look at all that data proving that these work. Or you would be if they hadn't lost it. NHTSA says they lost it when they moved buildings. So the data of the first 4 tests, the last 4 tests, has been lost, but you should take their word for it. It works. The data from the very first test has been released, and you can get that. Defense lawyers and their experts did manage to get it with some difficulty. And as a result, we now know that that 76% claim does not follow scientific principles. I'm not a scientist. Whether you are or not, I'm probably not capable of explaining exactly what the issues are with this statistical analysis. But the bottom line is this: that they tested people with a high BAC and they tested people with what they called a low BAC, which generally meant they didn't have any alcohol or they had little alcohol in them. In other words, they knew what their BAC was before they gave these field sobriety tests. And then critically, the police officers knew what the BAC was before deciding whether the field sobriety test showed they were intoxicated or not. Do you think that's fair? No reasonable person thinks that's fair, but NHTSA did. More importantly, the data shows that when people were guilty, that is when the test subjects had a high BAC, the police officers were able to identify that with great success. According to NHTSA, 93%. Now that's an amazing statistic. When people were drunk, the tests showed that they were uncoordinated 93% of the time. But when people were not drunk, the tests showed that they were uncoordinated 47% of the time. In other words, they were correct in identifying the innocent only 53% of the time. That's a coin toss. Now, through some statistics I admittedly don't understand, NHTSA came up with a total success, a total accuracy for these tests at 76%. Like I say, I don't understand the math and how they came to that number. I assume it was good math. But all I know is if you're not guilty, the test is going to say you are guilty 47% of the time. Now do you want to blow into it? Would you please take a ride in my airline? If you're flying to New York, I will get you there alive 93% of the time. But if you're flying to Houston, I will get you there alive 53% of the time. You gonna fly on that airline? Let's change the facts around. It's not alive or dead, it's locked up or not locked up. Have your driver's license taken away or not taken away. Hell, I wouldn't do it at the 93% because that's 7% chance that I'm going to lose my license. But guess what? I'm not guilty. And if they stop me right now and I did those tests, according to NHTSA, there is a 47% chance the cop would say I failed, even though I'm still in cold sober. Guess what else? I'm not that coordinated. I'm really not taking that dumb test. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if that hasn't convinced you to never take field sobriety tests, I'll have some more information for you later on. If you want to talk about the standardized field sobriety tests or any other area of the law, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you. And you have a great day.